Okay, got my 1995 export model. This is in Canada. It's a Enfield Bullet 500. Today I'm going to be putting on new tires and putting on new shoes, certainly in brake shoes, certainly in the front and probably in the rear, but I'll have a look because I didn't use the rear brake much. There's a modification that needs to be done to it that wasn't done at the factory, and when I get to the rear brake I'll show you what that is. I've had problems with cam lock on the back brake, on the rear brake, and I just got in the habit of not using it very much. So as a result, this bike has about 10 to 12,000 kilometers on it, and its speedometer, its odometer is inaccurate. It's never been accurate since the day I bought it new, and so I'm just guessing what's on this bike. But it's time for the brakes. The brakes are really adjusted out quite far on the front, and they're just not biting like they used to. So I've got a new set of shoes to put on it, as well as some new rubber. I'm going to go with the same kind of tires that it has on it, Avon Speedmasters. They're a little blocky in the back, but for this bike, it's not a fast bike, and you know, even though there's a lot of nice twisties around where I live, I don't take them very fast, so you don't need some sport bike type of tire that's super grippy. So we're going to get to that. So what I've done so far is just put the bike up on a piece of 2x6 here to raise it up a bit, so that I can lift up the front end a little bit when it comes time to get the tire off. I'll just put a hydraulic jack underneath the front engine mount there and pump it up a bit to lift it up, and should give me enough clearance to get the wheel off. Should note that this bike has some really strange fasteners on it. Most of the fasteners are metric, but not all. Some are imperial, and some are just this weird Whitworth type of fastener, like the nuts that thread onto the four studs that hold the axle to the front forks, to the stanchions. Those are 1/4 inch Whitworth. So there's no metric and no imperial wrench or socket that I own that fits on those. But luckily, I had bought a set of Whitworth combination wrenches when I bought this bike back in '95. So a 1/4 inch Whitworth fits on those nuts. So that's what I'll be using to take that off. So just some of the tools that I'm going to be using. Got my there's my Whitworth wrench. I've got an adjustable just to kind of undo the lock nut for the brake cable adjuster. I've got this adjustable wrench, which I'm not real fond of. If I have to use it, I'll use it. It only makes contact on 3 points, so I prefer not to use that if I can find something that'll make contact on more points, or a socket. I've got my tire wrenches or tire spoons, depending on what you like to call them, for taking the tires off. Got some plastic shims that I use just to protect the tire rim. Just made these out of an old windshield washer bottle, just some pieces of plastic, high density plastic. I've got some wrenches that I made up. The adjuster, or not the adjuster, the lock nut for the brake plate has always been loose, and I just never got around to taking off the wheel and locking it down. But when I go to put it back on, I'm going to put on Loctite. So I made up some wrenches to adjust it while it was on the bike, just to keep it a little tighter. All right, and that's it. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be loosening off. Let me see if I can get in. There it is. I'm going to be loosening off this guy here, the lock nut, and just taking this down so that it loosens up the brake cable a bit, so that I can slide it out of the end of its actuating arm here. And then on the other side, I've got to undo the speedometer cable, and it just screws on. It's kind of got a knurled knob on it. When I get that off, I'm going to have a look at it. It's probably going to need to be re-greased. Like I said, it never worked accurately since the day I bought it. And in fact, my slowest motorcycle, is actually the only motorcycle I ever ended up getting a speeding ticket on. As a result of that, what I ended up doing so that I wouldn't have a repeat of that was I put on a bicycle speedometer, and it just has a little magnet, and it just goes around with the wheel, and Hall effect just senses how many times it rotates. You tell the computer the circumference of the tire. So I just took a piece of string and put it around the outside circumference of the tire and fed that information into the computer, and it's very accurate. Really gives you a good speed reading, and it never agrees with the speedometer. So anyway, let's get to it.